Jennie.
Gutierrez.
Gutierrez.
That's how we pronounce it. Okay. Basically, where we kind of start is just ask about where you were born and
I was born in 1924 in Hershey, Nebraska.
Hershey, okay.
And my dad came over here first.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was here a few years, then he went back after mother and boy and a girl that he'd left there. And so then in 1924, I was born in Hershey.
I see.
And I was there until, let's see what year, until 1935.
So what was it like, Hershey, Nebraska, very small town?
Very, very small town, but I walked those day and night.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't scared at all, but my mother was, but I wasn't. Where have you been? I said, I've been watching them play basketball. Never thought about it.
All over town. Yeah.
All over town. You knew everybody. So you just weren't afraid.
And it was a different time back then, and everybody kind of watched out for themselves and others and that sort of thing.
Sometimes they wouldn't let me in the hall where they were playing. And I said, well, my brother's playing. Who? And I'd sit down with my brother Modesto's playing. I want to see him. Okay, come on in. So then Mother decided that I bet that's where I was. So she didn't worry about it. So, and he was older than I was. He was in high school when I was probably, at that time I was 7 or 8.
So you're the little sister?
The little sister. But there were 2 sisters at home, but I was the only one that liked to go vagabonding around Mom's house.
Now that they kind of watch over you.
So that's how I started, as being kind of nosy.
Yeah. you were out there.
But I was out.
Finding out what was all
It was funny, and I still have good memories of that. They celebrated, Hershey celebrated its anniversary, 100 years, and my husband and I went.
Oh,
and they just said, go whatever you want to, what you remember.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, the school was what I remember the most. Went through every room, went upstairs where my brother was in high school, and there he was, his picture there when he graduated from there.
So great. That's some good memories there, yeah.
So that was one of the good highlights of my life,
Mm-hmm.
Hershey, Nebraska.
And so you went through high?
No,
Where'd you go?
I went from
And you left
kindergarten through 4th grade.
4th grade, and then where?
Then we moved to Lexington.
To Lexington, and that's where you went through high school?
High school. I got there when I was a 5th grader,
Mm-hmm.
and I graduated from high school there.
In Lexington?
Lexington High School. But I got married first, and I had a little girl.
Oh, see.
She's my oldest girl,
Mm-hmm.
Kathleen. And but they asked me to come back and finish my school, and so I went back.
And you did?
And I did. Graduated from high school, and I didn't stop there. I wanted to go on to school and be a teacher. That was my goal when I was a 2nd grader.
Mm-hmm. You wanted to teach?
I wanted to be a teacher. And so from that time, from 2nd grade teacher in school,
Mm-hmm.
that was my entire goal all the way through. And so then we left Hershey in 1935.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mother was so upset because we had come to they didn't have beets anymore, sugar beets.
Oh.
And so Dad came to Lexington, and that's where we made our life after that.
I see. They had sugar beets?
Sugar beets.
Oh, good. That's good.
They had sugar beets here, but not in Hershey and North Platte. They didn't grow that anymore.
I see.
So then after
high school.
then of course I went to grade school all the way through in country schools, because wherever there were beets, we'd go to that place. And so whenever there wasn't any school, there wasn't any beats going on, were already done, and we were at this different place, but at that school that I went to,
Mm-hmm.
a rural school. And I went to a lot of rural schools.
The one room type,
One room.
with all the grades and
Yes,
that
with all the
sort of
grades.
thing.
And that's where I got, in Hershey, I wanted to be a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But for sure, that's where I was going to be a country school teacher.
Mm-hmm. So the teachers that you had, they impressed you,
Impressed me.
and that's really what you wanted to do.
In an old car that we had, we bought it in 1931, and Dad couldn't drive, so guess who learned to drive? I did.
You did.
So I drove that car to school, and no one ever asked me, do you have your driver's license?
But you know how to drive it, so that was enough.
And then I graduated from Lexington High School in 1944. So then when I graduated from high school, I took my normal training test and passed it, and that's how I became a teacher. But I remember walking those roads to country school, myself and my sister. But she didn't like school.
She didn't care for it.
No, she just cried all the time. So, but
you couldn't get enough of it, though.
And I
You
did.
loved it.
So then I took normal training when I was in high school, in Lexington High School. By that time, my sister had quit school, and she went to just staying home. Then afterwards, she decided that she wanted to have a profession too, and so she went to become a beauty operator.
Okay.
And she was not a beauty operator.
She
But I was a teacher. So just
For how long?
Oh, I went to, this was in 44 when I got my certificate to teach. And this is going to Kearney in the summertime and to school. And I graduated in 42. See? So 2 years I went to summer school and got my normal training and all my teaching.
Kearney and then to teach, taught in Lexington.
You taught
right?
in the rural
And
schools?
then I taught in Lexington.
And some of the rural schools too, the
All of
one
those.
room.
The one, but
All of the rural schools that you taught in throughout Dawson County
just about
for
all.
43 years.
Because since 1944, when I got my teacher certificate, I would be teaching in one school, and I'd teach there for a couple of years. And then another school came along, another group of people would come, school board members, want to know if I want to go to their school.
Go somewhere else.
And I would go wherever they gave me the most money.
Sure, yeah, well, that's a good motivation. Oh, yeah.
And I'd tell them, well, I don't have a car. Well, we'll furnish the car for you. So they furnished the car for me for a couple of years, and then after that, well, then the folks and I, we bought a little jalopy, and
Yeah, something good. Yes.
and they had heard about me, and they had all of my credentials and everything.
And they wanted you to come up there.
They wanted me to come up there.
So did you go?
The following year, I did.
You went up there, yeah.
I said, let me think about it and then come back in a couple of weeks or so. And they came back, and I figured out that if I had a little better car, by then my husband was in the service.
Okay. In the military.
Okay. See, he left in 44. And so, 44? Yes, because we were married in 42. 43, 44, yes, and he left in 44. And all those years that he was in service, I was teaching school.
Teaching. Yeah.
But not just in one school. 2 years I stayed the most in one.
Right.
But the one that I told you was sitting there waiting for me, I stayed there 16 years.
Those were the last 16 years.
At Gothenburg?
At Gothenburg.
No kidding. Oh, yes.
Gothenburg. I had the upper grades,
Yeah.
and I really liked that.
Now, did you commute
But I got a better
From
room.
Lexington.
Oh, with a better car?
She got Park Avenue by then.
Oh, there you go. First joining us. That's great. We're filming for it's a Greatest Generation project where we talk to people and to just find out about their life stories and that sort of thing. So basically where I'd like to start is just where you're born or your upbringing. I said what?
I was born in Nashville, Tennessee,
Nashville.
August 25th, 1914.
I see.
And shortly after I was born, my father moved to New York.
Okay.
He knew that war was coming on,
Yes.
so he bought a farm in New York State,
Okay.
across the river from New York City, the Hudson River. So I can recall the railroad tracks ran in front of the body of water that was in front of our farm.
Okay.
And I remember the World War I soldiers during the summer opening up the windows and waving at us where we stood on
And
the
they were
shore.
on the train.
Yeah,
Okay.
when they were on the train. So that was one of my earliest
Oh,
memories.
yes.
Then he sold the farm right after war ended. And we moved to New York City.
Oh, okay.
There, my mother died in the flu epidemic that started about 1918 and took about 20 million people.
Oh my gosh.
And it was called the Spanish flu epidemic.
Okay.
And my youngest brother was only 2 weeks old. And her mother died about 2 weeks after she did, not knowing that she had passed away. So my father had 6 children from 2 weeks
So that's,
to about
Yeah.
8 or 9 years. So he had to kind of farm us out. And so I went with my uncle and aunt who lived in Masontown, Pennsylvania.
okay.
And then he remarried and moved back to Nashville. And I was the last one that he wanted to have rejoin the family. So my uncle took me to Pittsburgh. We lived in Masontown, Pennsylvania, which is not far from Pittsburgh. And he turned me over to the Travelers Aid Society. Now, the Travelers Aid Society had been sending orphan trains west from all the eastern communities that had lost so many people that there were thousands of orphans left. And they put them on trains and sent them west.
No, it was just in the 20s, what did you say, or 30?
Oh, this was in the
In
in the 20s.
the 20s, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because my mother died in January 1920.
Okay.
And this was at the height of the flu
Flu
epidemic.
epidemic, yes.
So he took me to Pittsburgh and turned me over to the Travelers Aid Society.
Okay.
They put a big label on me called Travelers Aid. And I was sent from Pittsburgh to Chicago and from Chicago to Nashville. So my uncle dropped me off in Pittsburgh
Yeah.
and I ended up the next day in Nashville.
In Nashville. Oh, okay, so you made the round trip.
I made the trip. I lived in Nashville, went to school there, of course. And when I was 13, my father, having difficulties with my stepmother, she gave him the ultimatum of her or the children. So he chose the children. So he put us in he divorced her, put us in his Ford with the isinglass windows, and we went to Chicago. All 6 of us sitting.
What did your father do? What was his...
He did everything under the sun,
Whatever
and he
it
was
took.
good at everything he did.
I see. Because he had the farm for a while?
He had the farm for once, he had businesses, different kinds of businesses.
Okay.
He ended up, at the age of 60, doing, I'm trying to think of what it was that he did. We became a pattern maker for Pratt Whitney
Okay.
that built airplanes.
Metal and that sort of thing,
So, anyway, we got to Chicago. And I went to high school there.
Okay.
And met my husband later through cousins in Nashville because my husband had gone to Peabody College in Nashville to get his master's degree.
Okay.
Now,
So you travel back and forth between Nashville and Chicago and...
No, but my sister went to Chicago
Oh, she did. Okay.
on vacation
Uh-huh.
and met my husband.
Oh, I see.
And then when he came back back home to Lincoln, why he stopped off at Chicago to visit relatives, and he called my sister, and I was living in the same house, and so he met me. And when he went back home, I got the letter instead of my sister.
Oh.
But he was a very athletic person, and he went to the University of Nebraska. He became the Big Six champion in swimming, in the backstroke, and in diving. And he had a nickname of Fancy Diver, Fancy Dresser, Cooklet.
Because that he was, huh?
That he was, right. So after we were married, he got a job with the Lincoln school system as a coach and swimming.
Teaching.
And teaching phys ed.
Sure.
Well, my son was born in a year and a half later. And he had heard from friends who had gone down to the Panama Canal Zone that you got paid twice as much as salary there than Lincoln was paying. So he applied to the Panama Canal Zone and was accepted. So he went down in August from New York. He sailed and went to the Panama Canal. And in November, must have been October, I had the baby and went to the Panama Canal Zone through New Orleans.
Okay.
And we spent, of course, the next month, war began. So we spent the whole 4 years in blackout in the Canal Zone. We lived in Balboa on the Pacific side. And we could see the ships entering into the canal.
Oh, that must have been quite the sight.
That was quite a sight, right. And there are only two that I really remember. One was we saw the Missouri coming home after the peace treaty had been signed. And all the people went to the Gatun locks and stood along the locks to cheer.
Yes, as the boat came,
As the boat came through.
Sure.
And it had to come through very slowly because there was only about 6 inches on each side. It was such a huge, huge ship. So the sailors on board were just right above us,
Right
practically.
there they were,
So they cheered and we cheered, and the sailors threw their hats to the children who were standing there. And my daughter still has 2 hats from the...
Oh my gosh. Well, thanks for coming down here today and talking to us. And what we're doing is the television documentary. It's a project. We call it The Faces of the Greatest Generation. And we appreciate your coming down here with us today. But basically where we started is kind of where you were born.
South Bend, Nebraska.
Oh, South Bend? Oh, yeah. And is that where you grew up?
Yeah.
In South Bend? Yeah. And what was that like? Small town outside of Omaha?
Yeah. Probably 75 people.
Oh, yeah. One-room schoolhouse type thing?
I went to District 57 for 8 years. And I went to Murdoch for high school until, good old Franklin D. Roosevelt said, I'm going to draft you.
Yeah.
And you did.
Oh, yeah. Right. Right, yeah.
So then I went for basic training
Mm-hmm.
at Fort McClellan, Alabama,
Mm-hmm.
and was there for 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Got on troop train, and first stop was Rome, Georgia, where they had a canteen. Every soldier got a sandwich, a cookie, and a glass of wine, and took off through, I don't know what other states.
That was basic training
No, that was
after basic. Oh, yeah.
And I was being shipped west, and I went to Cincinnati, Chicago, Des Moines. I had a 3-day pass at Omaha, and I went, stopped at the famous USO canteen at North Platte, Nebraska.
Oh, in North Platte. Oh, yeah.
And ended up at Pittsburgh, California,
Mm-hmm.
Camp Stone. Old MacArthur's buddy. He was a prisoner of war also for 1,125 days before being rescued. And so,
In the South Pacific.
yeah,
Is that where he was? Yeah.
in Philippines now.
Philippines. Yeah.
And so, while I was there, I helped dig up bones of U.S. servicemen killed by the Japanese on the death march.
Mm-hmm.
And the Japanese never did go by the Geneva Convention. On the death march, if a soldier fell down, Japanese would kick him, get up, and if he didn't get up, they had a club. They'd club him to death, club him just about to death,
Mm-hmm.
kick him off the side of the road, or else they'd take a bayonet, jab through him quite a few times till he was just about dead, kick him over, and everybody keep going. There were 69,000 people, Philippine people, and American troops, Philippine scout troops that were on the death march. And I have a picture of MacArthur and General Wainwright.
General Wainwright. Okay.
Wainwright standing right behind MacArthur,
Mm-hmm.
and MacArthur was in charge of the surrender of the Japanese on the Battleship Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
I have a picture of that. I have a picture of MacArthur and Wainwright and a Philippine Scout commander and another commander.
You ain't wrong, you're right. If it ain't day, it's night. If you ain't sure, you might. It's gotta be this or that.